Today we are taking a look at the Sassy Club Notebook. Hi everybody, welcome to today's video. Today we are taking a look at the Sassy Club Notebook. I am super excited to finally be reviewing this. Full disclosure, Sandra at the Sassy Club sent me this notebook, but I had already purchased 2 of them myself, so yeah, I was super excited to give these a try. Now, a bit of background, the Sassy Club is a stamp shop, and recently she put out a planner. I was super excited to try the planner, but I'm obviously not a planner person, so she then put out the notebook, the dark grid notebook, which is again right up my alley, so I made sure to grab some. The reason why I was so excited for this little notebook is because the paper is completely bleed proof, like even alcohol inks bleed proof. So I'm super excited to test that out, but let's talk about this little notebook. The notebook is $34.95 US. It ships out of the US. It comes in 2 colors. It comes in the ivory and the purple. So 2 really pretty colors with these beautiful designs on them. The notebook is a B6 size. Now, if you're not familiar with the standard notebooks, this is a A5 size. And this is the B5 size. So this guy is little, but it's bigger than a pocket size, so just so that you have that in mind for sizing. So the paper in this little notebook is 180 GSM. The Archer and Olive that I use is 160, and then watercolor notebooks are 200 GSM. So this is right between the popular 160 and then watercolor 200. There's 112 pages in this notebook. The dots are fairly light, so if you have problems keeping track of where your dots are going, you might run into some problems, but otherwise it's not too bad. The paper has a little bit of grit to it, not much, but it's a little bit grittier. The notebook comes with 1 bookmark, 1 ribbon bookmark that is sewn into the notebook. There is no index, there's no nameplate page, and no pocket on the back, and the pages aren't numbered, so just keep that in mind if that is something that you like. The dot grid is 22 squares across by 33 squares down, and it looks to be the standard 5mm dot grid size. So now we're going to get into the good stuff, which is testing. If you have seen my previous notebook tests, I have a set strategy that I follow. I have the pens that I test. You can also check that full review out over on my blog, which I will link down below. But we're going to see how this guy handles, and I'm particularly excited about the alcohol inks. So let's get testing. Okay, so here's the fun stack of pens that we will be testing. A flare, a gel, a monoline drawing pen from Tombow, a Micron, a Prisma, ballpoint pen, fountain pen, a Pentel Touch, Fudenosuke, a mild liner, a Friction, a Crayola, a Tombow, a Jelly Roll, a Sharpie, which I'm super pumped about, an acrylograph. We're going to look at watercolor, and then we're going to look at stamping. We're going to look at dye ink, pigment ink, and solvent ink. Now, because this paper is supposed to work with alcohol pens, I'm also going to grab a Copic marker, and I'm going to grab a Tombow alcoholic marker as well, and we'll test those out just to see. So let's get going. Okay, so the worst part is I've already filmed the pen test, so I know what's going to happen. I like to do first reacts when I'm doing these, but my camera quality was absolutely gross and unacceptable. So I'm filming it again, so you're going to be able to see how the different pens work. I'm using the same pens that I discussed in the previous clip in this video. So we will now get to swatching, and I will be doing a smudge test as well that you can check out. Okay, so here's the results of our pen test. This is my Prismacolor fine point or felt point pen. It's not working, it's done. So we'll just move on from that one. All of the pens smudged, and I didn't think there was a coating on the paper, but given the amount of smudging, there must be something to coat the paper. And obviously the acrylograph is a paint pen, so that's smudged. But now we are going to take a look and we're going to see if there was any bleed through. And yeah, let's go. As you can tell, there is no ghosting, there is no bleed through. There's a little bit of, what's the word? There's a little bit of ridging where I pushed hard on the paper, but otherwise no bleed through, no ghosting. And the paper doesn't even feel that thick. So I really don't understand the magic of this paper. So we're going to look at watercolors and stamping next. Just to remind you, we will be stamping a dye ink, a pigment ink, and a solvent ink. In the other journals, the solvent ink has bled through regardless of the thickness of the paper, so that's just something to keep in mind when we compare it. But we're going to start with the watercolor test first. We're going to do a paint saturated test, and then I'm going to use a bit more water and we're going to see what the watered down color does. And while that's drying, we're going to take a look at the stampings. So we're going to test for stamping and smudging. Okay, so we're going to take a look at bleed through. For the smudging, the dye ink had very little smudging, which dye ink will soak into a page, so that's not a surprise. Pigment ink sits on top of a page until it dries, so the smudging, that's normal for all of the notebooks we've tested. And then the solvent ink smudged a little. I did re-ink my pad, so that might be part of it, but if you let it dry even just for a couple seconds more, you're not going to have that issue. So let's see. So there is nothing. The page isn't even warping where I use a lot of paint, and it dried really quickly. And then there is no bleed through from the dye or solvent ink either. And for the record, I have done a hand-lettered layout in the book. I've practiced some stamping in this book, and every time I've sat staring at the back page looking for some indication that it's bled through. So overall, I am super impressed by this little notebook. She really knocked it out of the park. My only downside would be the sizing. I would love a bigger size. I would just, yeah, B5's my size. So Sandra, if you're watching this, I'd like a B5, please. Let me grab my Tombos, the Tombow alcohol pens, and I'll grab the Copics, which are alcohol-based pens too, and you can check that out. So here we have the Tombow ABT Pro. This is their alcohol-based marker, and we're just gonna go to town on that. I didn't even test this in the other notebooks because it's alcohol-based, just like Sharpies are, and it'll bleed through. It doesn't care, it'll bleed through. And there's nothing there. There's not even a shadow, no ghosting, nothing. So the other fun thing I wanted to show is the Copic markers. These are alcohol based as well, and these pens are actually magic because of how they blend. So normally when you blend, you're going to run into oversaturating the page. So we're going to take a look and see here. So it does dry very quickly, so you don't get as, or at least I don't, but it's been a while since I've blended my Copics. But as you can see, I'm going over and over the page, and it's not even pulling. The paper is not even, there's not even like the little balls that you get when the paper's wet. And there's the back of the page. Absolutely nothing. So the other one I wanted to test, or I tested previously, were the Caron Brush Marker Pros that actually they bleed in the 160 GSM notebooks. So I wanted to give them a try and see how they do in this one. So these are water-based brush markers that bleed like the dickens in the 160 GSM. So we're going to take a look and see. I'm going to do some blending too so that we can see how it goes. So again, the paper isn't pulling. Just going to stick a sticky note there. So so there you have the pen test. This actually kept me up last night with how magical it is, because I hate bleeding and ghosting so much, and this just doesn't do either of those things, and it's like sorcery and witchcraft at this point. But I hope you enjoyed today's review. I will share the piece that I created using Sharpie markers over on Instagram, so you can check that out. If you want to watch more bullet journal reviews and get a feel for a journal that you want, you can check out my review series, either linked down below or over on my blog, which I'll link as well. And if you'd like to learn more about creative journaling, you can check out my Patreon, which is linked down below as well, where I teach lettering techniques, doodles, creative techniques, and then we do some journaling and some prompts. Thank you so much for watching today.